You know how some people rent a place first while waiting for their dream house? Collectors do it too. Except our rentals are action figures filling up the shelf until something better releases or until we save for the figure we actually like. And these are what we call placeholders. In my previous video, I have shared some anime action figure lines that offers good quality despite being affordable. But as I revisit the video again and look into the side-by-side comparison between these figure lines and some higher quality lines like Master Lice, I have seen that there are instances that the quality between the figures may be so noticeable. Which is why I wanted to share my thoughts about placeholders and the things that you may want to consider before getting one. To start, let us first determine what a placeholder is and how a specific line or figure falls into this category. A placeholder action figure is a cheaper or less detailed action figure that you buy to fill a gap in your collection as an alternative to the ideal or more expensive version. We do have plenty of ways of finding placeholders for our collection, but let me share three kinds or examples of them. The first one is a cheaper figure from the same line. Perfect example of this is the Masterlice Majin Vegeta, which I consider as an alternative to the e-moving Majin Vegeta. They are both from the same line Masterlice, but here you'll notice a difference from their details, pose, and features. Most collectors consider the e-moving as the superior version, causing high demand for the said figure and make its price a lot higher. Which is why most collectors, like myself, considered buying the newer version, which is more affordable. Though there are differences from their details, just like Master Lice Majin Vegeta, buying an alternative from the same line is one of the greatest options when it comes to picking a placeholder, since they can fit well on your collection, especially if you wanted to focus on a single line. Another example of placeholder figures are action figures from a completely different line, just like the G&G Toga that I featured last video, which has almost the same scale but shows differences from the details of the Master Lights version. And lastly are bootleg figures. I wanted to make a separate video that focuses on my thoughts about bootleg figures since there are budget collectors who usually buys bootleg in order to get a figure of their favorite character without spending too much. But we'll dig deeper into that on another episode. We can also categorize placeholder figures into two types, which are permanent and temporary placeholders. Permanent placeholders are figures that may not be the best or most accurate version, but you're perfectly fine keeping. It fills the spot, does the job, and you don't feel the need to replace it anymore. On the other hand, temporary placeholders are from the name itself are temporary stand-ins that collectors use to fill gaps in their display or collection while waiting for a higher quality, more accurate, or more preferred version of a character. And to help you decide whether or not to buy a placeholder figure, whether it's temporary or permanent, let's discuss its pros and cons. Aside from it being a budget option, let's start with the pros. Number one is it fills display gaps instantly and lets you enjoy the figure or character right away. Since they are typically cheaper, buying a placeholder allows you to complete the set or theme that you are planning easily and also allows you to immediately enjoy the feeling of having a figure of the character that you like or a character that completes your lineup. Number two is to reduce the risk of impulse buying for expensive figures. This can help you prevent from rushing into overpriced purchases, especially for figures that are way above your allotted budget. I also wanted to relate this to the previous point earlier because if you already decided to settle on the placeholder, you can now allocate your extra budget to the other figures that you need on your collection. Third and last from this list is a placeholder's possibility on being a permanent keeper. While placeholders are usually bought as a temporary stand-in, some of them unexpectedly becomes the permanent option for most cases. This happened to me personally when I bought a copy of the Masterlized Magin Vegeta. At first, I was planning to only keep it until I can afford the e-moving Magin Vegeta, but eventually, I became satisfied with the details of the figure and the upgrade felt unnecessary. Moving on with the cons, let's start with the possibility of spending twice. This is because buying the placeholder and buying the upgrade later can cost more overall. And since these figures are oftentimes with lower prices, budget figures often don't retain their value, especially for bootleg figures, which is why it is best to think this over. Number two is its possibility for its quality to bother you over time. Flaws that seem minor at first may eventually bother you the longer you look at it or the longer you have it on your collection. I've heard from other collectors that they feel that placeholders sometimes stand out negatively in a line of higher end pieces. So it is best to practice watching reviews and available comparisons first before buying the set figure. And the last from this list is that it can clutter your collection. Since placeholders, especially bootlegs, often don't retain their worth or value, there are times that once you get the upgrade, you might struggle figuring out what to do with the old one. And those are my thoughts on getting a placeholder action figure. Placeholders may not be perfect, but they surely can be helpful depending on how you collect. I hope this video helps you decide whether or not to buy one and keep you reminded to build your display at your own pace. That's it for this episode, and I'll see you all on the next one.